It's fascinating that Rafael Nadal's the favourite in this match, considering he lost the last 3 Grand Slam finals to Navak Djokovic. But of course the main reason for that is his stellar record on clay, which is literally second to none. And that's because his game is so well suited to the dirt compared to other surfaces. And here's a good example of why. When these two met in the Wimbledon final last year, Nadal's average rally hit point was 1.2 metres behind the baseline. In the US Open final it was 1.3 metres behind the baseline, and in the Australian Open final he dropped a little deeper, ending up on average 1.6 metres behind it. And obviously that was the closest Nadal got to winning any of the 3 finals. In Paris this year, his average rally hit point so far is deeper still at 1.8 metres. So it's obvious that this is where he prefers to play when the court is a little slower. And there are plenty of reasons for this. Firstly, it gives him a little more time to take such big swings at the ball, which in turn allows him to generate such a colossal amount of spin. This gives him a nice high margin for error, as most of his ground strokes, particularly his forehands, clear the net by a healthy margin, and then because the ball kicks so viciously off the court and gets up nice and high, Nadal doesn't need to go as close to the lines as most of his peers. Look at how far his average cross-court forehand is away from the baseline and the sideline. So when you take into account the net clearance and his safe targets, there's no wonder he makes so few unforced errors, especially when compared to Djokovic. So how can Djokovic deal with that cross-court forehand? Well, having a double-handed backhand certainly helps. And on other court surfaces, it's been a bit easier. In the Wimbledon final, his average rally hit point was just 60 centimetres behind the baseline, and he made contact with the ball 99 centimetres off the ground, which compared to his actual height, which is 1.88 metres, is pretty comfortable. At the US Open, he was even more aggressive as he stood 20 centimetres closer to the baseline, but because the ball bounces a little more on a hard court, his contact point was a little higher, at 1.18 metres off the ground, still relatively comfortable. And again in Australia it was a similar story, up the court and taking the ball well within his comfort zone. But of course on clay, it's much more difficult to do that given the nature of the court surface and the unpredictability of the bounce. And that's the challenge for Djokovic. Can he execute a relatively high-risk strategy of taking the ball on the rise over 5 sets without making too many unforced errors in order to beat Nadal? Many have tried and failed at Roland Garros in the past, so history suggests otherwise. But career Grand Slams don't come easy.